Hi, I'm Shanda. For most of my life, I thought being invisible in my own family was just something I had to accept. Birthday after birthday passed without a word, and somehow I still kept hoping they'd notice, until the day they threw a party, but not for me. Why does it take being erased to finally realize you were never really there at all? Tell me, have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Share your story below. Forgotten celebrations. The house was buzzing with noise. Balloons floated in every corner, streamers hung from the ceiling, and the kitchen counter groaned under the weight of a massive cake emblazoned with "Congratulations, Dean." People filled the rooms, laughing, clinking glasses, shouting over each other. In the center of it all stood Dean, smiling like the sun, basking in everyone's attention. I lingered by the hallway, half hidden behind the coat rack. No one noticed. No one ever really did. I kept waiting for something, anything, to acknowledge the day meant something for me too. It didn't come. I glanced around the room again, scanning for signs. A second cake, a gift bag tucked away, maybe even just a card. Nothing. I counted on my fingers, a childish habit I hadn't outgrown. 1, 2, 3, 17. Today was my 17th birthday, and 17 people had forgotten. I told myself it didn't matter. I had told myself that same thing last year, and the year before. When Patricia finally drifted by, I found my voice enough to catch her sleeve. "Mom," I said, voice barely above a whisper, "you know today's my birthday too, right?" She blinked, distracted by the noise, then smiled that same tight smile she reserved for sales clerks and neighbors she didn't like. "Sweetheart, it's just another day. You're practically grown now, no need for all that fuss." She patted my arm and moved on before I could say anything else. Her words clanged inside my chest louder than any of the party music. Just another day. I slipped out to the backyard, needing air, needing space, needing something that wasn't thick with other people's joy. The porch light buzzed overhead, casting a tired yellow glow across the wooden planks. I sat down on the top step and pulled my knees to my chest. It wasn't new, this feeling. I remembered past birthdays, the ones with last-minute cupcakes or forgotten altogether because someone else had an emergency, a recital, a bad day at work. I was always the afterthought, the background noise to someone else's life. The kitchen door creaked open behind me. I didn't turn around. Whoever it was, they weren't coming for me. The door creaked shut again. I stood and wandered back inside quietly, slipping into the dim kitchen. In one of the drawers, buried under old batteries and stray twist ties, I found a stub of a birthday candle. White, bent, almost useless. I lit it over the stove and cupped it carefully in my palms, the tiny flame trembling in the drafty kitchen air. I closed my eyes and made a wish, not for presents or parties, or even for them to remember. I wished for something I didn't even have words for yet, maybe just to matter. The flame danced, then died with a soft hiss as I blew it out. As the smoke curled upward, I heard another roar of laughter from the living room, louder this time. Dean's name echoed through the walls, wrapped in cheers and clinking glasses. I watched the last tendrils of smoke dissolve into nothing. Maybe I was never really part of it. The night I needed them most. The rain had started before my shift ended, a slow drizzle that thickened into a relentless downpour by the time I made it to the car. I tightened my jacket around me, fumbling with the keys as water ran into my sleeves. The parking lot lights blurred in the sheets of rain, turning the world into a watercolor smear of yellow and gray. I was tired. Not just the kind of tired that settles into your bones after a long day, but the kind that seeps into your spirit, weighing down every thought. The roads gleamed slick and treacherous under the storm. My hands gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles whitening with every flash of lightning across the sky. I should have waited, but there was no one to call for a ride, no one to text and say, "Can you pick me up?" So I drove. Because that's what you do when you learn not to expect a safety net. I didn't see the other car until it was too late. The screech of tires, the sickening crunch of metal, the dizzying spin. When everything finally stopped, I sat there for a moment, stunned, the seatbelt cutting into my shoulder, the world unnaturally silent, but for the frantic pounding of the rain. The ambulance came. Someone must have called it. Not me. I couldn't seem to make my hands work right. At the hospital, they checked my vitals, patched a shallow gash on my forehead, wrapped my wrist. Minor injuries, they said. Lucky girl. Lucky. I clutched the hospital blanket around me and did what I'd been taught to do in moments of crisis. Reach out. I called Patricia. It rang twice before going to voicemail. I left a message. I texted Dean. No reply. I texted Carla. Nothing. I called Charles. Straight to voicemail. The nurse smiled kindly at me when she brought a cup of lukewarm tea. She patted my hand like she would a lost child. I smiled back and swallowed the lump rising in my throat. Hours later, as paperwork shuffled across counters and my injuries were declared stable, it became undeniably clear no one was coming. I asked about filing an insurance claim. The woman behind the desk looked at me with a mix of confusion and pity. "You're not listed on the policy," she said gently. "It looks like you were removed a few years ago." Removed. I nodded, numb, and finished signing the forms to pay out of pocket. The walk to my apartment felt longer than the drive had. Every step heavy, deliberate, like walking through wet cement. I sat on the floor by the coffee table, hospital papers scattered around me like a paper blizzard. The cheap bandage on my forehead itched, but I barely noticed. All those years of forgiving the missed birthdays, the forgotten recitals, the lonely hospital waiting rooms. Maybe it's time I start preparing for the fact they already left me long ago. The phone buzzed suddenly, making me jump. I snatched it up, heart stumbling in my chest. But it wasn't from any of them. Cracks beneath the surface. The call came on a Wednesday morning, chirpy and saccharine enough to raise every internal alarm I had developed over the years. Patricia's voice spilled through the receiver like oversweetened tea, inviting me to brunch that Saturday. "Just us girls," she had said. "It's been too long, sweetheart." Against better judgment, I agreed. A small part of me, the part that hadn't quite learned, still wanted to believe maybe something had changed. The brunch spot was a sunny little cafe downtown, filled with fresh flowers and the clink of cheerful silverware. For a moment, it almost felt normal. I let myself relax, sipping lukewarm coffee while Patricia chattered about weather and grocery prices, smiling too brightly. Halfway through her second mimosa, she pulled out a manila folder from her oversized bag and slid it across the table. "Just a little thing," she said, voice casual, eyes too sharp. "It's paperwork for the house. All you have to do is co-sign. It's really just a formality to help secure it for the family's future. No big deal." No big deal. I touched the folder lightly, as if it might burn. My heart thudded against my ribs. Every warning light inside me flared up, neon bright. I didn't open it. Instead, I looked up at her, into the carefully constructed innocence she wore like a second skin. I forced a smile, folded my napkin neatly, and slid the folder back. "I'll think about it," I said, standing up before she could say more. Dean called that evening. His voice was low, cautious, almost guilty. "I shouldn't be telling you this," he mumbled, "but Mom tried to get me to sign something like that too. Said if necessary she could find a way to get it done without us." I didn't ask what he meant by find a way. I didn't. Every unanswered text pressing down on my shoulders. "I'm not signing anything," I said. My voice didn't shake. Patricia's mouth tightened. Dean said nothing. I turned and walked away, feeling the invisible strings that had tied me to them fray a little more with every step. That night, when I returned home, I found an envelope wedged beneath my apartment door. No return address. Inside was a copy of the mortgage papers. My signature was there, clear as day. Only I hadn't signed them. The Thanksgiving that wasn't the day had started almost perfectly. A crisp, golden November sun washed over the city, scattering soft light through the windows of Lorraine's apartment. The smell of cinnamon rolls and fresh coffee lingered, warmth filling the room. Laughter buzzed around me, real laughter, the kind that didn't ask anything in return. It had been a long time since I let myself feel safe like this. I was helping Lorraine set the table when my phone buzzed against the counter. Without thinking, I wiped my hands and checked it. Dean. The message was short, pointed, cutting through the moment like a blade. "Hope you're happy ruining Thanksgiving for the rest of us. Some sister you are." The words made my chest tighten, breath catching halfway out. I stared at the screen, the world around me fading into background noise. I hadn't been invited to anything, hadn't heard a word about plans. There were no group texts, no casual mentions, nothing. And yet somehow, it was still my fault. I slipped outside onto the small balcony, the chilly air sharp against my skin. The city moved around me, cars honking, people laughing down the block. Life, vibrant and oblivious. I tapped a quick message to Carla, asking if something had happened, trying to sound casual. She responded hours later with a lukewarm, almost patronizing, "It's fine, we just wish you cared more." No answers, just more fog, more guilt pressed into old bruises. Later that night, a mutual friend from high school sent me a cheerful message. "Saw your family's Thanksgiving pics. Looked fun." Attached were photos. Patricia smiling broadly at the head of a crowded table, Dean carving a turkey, Carla clinking wine glasses with someone I didn't recognize. My stomach turned. The timestamp on the photos matched perfectly with the time I'd been frosting cupcakes in Lorraine's kitchen. They hadn't forgotten to invite me. They had chosen not to. I sat down hard on the edge of my bed, phone slipping from my fingers onto the comforter. Some part of me, stubborn and foolish, had clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, there was still a space for me somewhere in their world. But the truth had been hiding in plain sight all along. Not an oversight, not a misunderstanding, a choice. The room blurred slightly, but I didn't cry. The tears had dried up long before tonight, somewhere between forgotten birthdays and lonely hospital stays. I opened my laptop and scrolled back through old messages, piecing together the timelines like a forensic scientist at a crime scene. Every silence, every missed call, every polite half-lie. The pattern was as clear as glass now. They didn't want me there. Not really. Neglect wasn't an accident. It was systemic. It was built into the foundation of everything they claimed was family. I opened a blank message window, hands trembling just slightly. "I can't miss a family I was never truly part of." I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't sad. I was waking up. Signed without consent. The rain had come early that day, drumming softly against the windows, painting the world outside in blurred streaks of gray. I sat cross-legged on the living room floor, a dusty pile of old mail and forgotten documents strewn around me. It had been a slow afternoon, one of those rare moments when life felt almost manageable, until it wasn't. Buried beneath a stack of grocery store coupons and old utility bills was a crisp envelope from a law office I didn't recognize. No return address, no markings beyond my name, scrawled in neat, impersonal letters. A strange chill prickled at the base of my neck as I tore it open. Inside were guardianship papers. My name printed neatly as the sole guardian for David. No prior conversation, no warning, no consent. Shock washed through me so fast it left me breathless. The words on the page blurred and refocused as my brain fought to make sense of what it was reading. They had planned this, quietly, deliberately, while smiling across dinner tables and exchanging meaningless holiday texts. The betrayal had roots far deeper than I had ever dared imagine. With shaking hands, I grabbed my laptop, searching county records and court filings. It didn't take long to find the paper trail. An initial submission had already been attempted a year prior, but rejected due to missing signatures. They hadn't even needed me present to try to bind me to their crumbling world. They just needed my name. I stood there, breathing shallow, feeling the house tilt slightly under the weight of this new truth. I texted Patricia. "We need to talk, tonight." The reply came quickly, a simple thumbs-up emoji. No guilt, no apology, no shame. As the afternoon deepened into evening, I paced the small length of my apartment, rehearsing words I wasn't sure I could say aloud. Each memory played like an unwanted film reel behind my eyes. The forgotten birthdays, the empty hospital rooms, the accusations, the silences that shouted louder than any words, all of it leading to this moment. By the time I heard the knock at my door, the apartment was lit only by the soft glow of one lamp in the corner. The guardianship papers sat on the kitchen table, untouched. Next to them, a pen, uncapped, ready, but not for me. No longer the quiet one. The message came early, before the sun had even warmed the windows. A simple, clipped sentence from Patricia. "Your father's in the hospital. "You need to come home." There was no hello, no how are you, no kindness, only expectation, delivered cold as steel. I stared at the screen for a long time, the blue light painting my tired face in the half-lit kitchen. I should have felt something more. Panic, fear, sadness maybe. Instead, all I felt was a weary dread pooling in my chest. I set the phone down and made another cup of coffee, listening to the hollow clink of the spoon against the mug. No one had asked if I could come. No one had wondered what it would cost me. They simply expected it, like a due payment finally being collected. And as I sat there, the walls of my apartment feeling both too small and too empty, another notification buzzed through. Carla. Her Facebook post was veiled but unmistakable, dripping with passive aggression dressed up as heartbreak. Some people forget where they came from. Some people can't even show up when family needs them most. It's sad when loyalty dies. The comments piled in quickly. Neighbors, family friends, even old teachers, tut-tutting their disapproval, sharing little prayer hands and broken heart emojis. None of them knew. None of them cared to know. I shut off my phone and tossed it onto the couch with more force than necessary. The room felt heavy, charged with a storm I hadn't created but was expected to weather alone. Sitting at the kitchen table, I let the memories come. Not the soft ones. Not anymore. Only the sharp ones. Every time I bit my tongue. Every time I swallowed my hurt. Every time I stayed when I should have run. Obedience had been my only armor once. Now it felt like a noose. I deleted the Facebook app from my phone without a second thought. Enough. Enough pretending I didn't see what had always been there. Enough carrying the guilt they piled onto me like sandbags. That night, under the hum of the single kitchen light, I opened a blank document on my laptop. I typed the things no one had ever dared say out loud. Every small betrayal, every silent abandonment, every moment I had pretended wasn't as bad as it felt. The words poured out of me, not angry, but clear. Cold and clean like the first breath after a long dive. I didn't send it. Not yet. I saved it. I closed the laptop, and for the first time, I felt the ground shift beneath me. Not in fear, but in readiness. The next time they tried to bury me in silence, they'd find I had learned how to speak. When silence breaks. The text hit me before my feet even touched the floor. Carla's words flashed across the lock screen, vicious and cold in the soft morning light. "You're nothing but a selfish burden. Always have been." It landed sharper than I wanted it to, slicing through the thin layer of peace I had tried to wrap around myself. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the screen, feeling the old wounds split open in a way that almost felt mechanical now. Expected. I didn't reply. What was the point? Engaging would only fuel the fire they had been stoking for years. They needed me to be the villain in their story. It made it easier to hide their own sins behind my silence. The day dragged by heavy and slow. I kept busy, folding laundry, wiping down counters that didn't need it, reorganizing the same bookshelf twice, anything to keep my mind from spiraling. But evening brought another blow. Dean's email arrived just as the sun dipped below the skyline, casting long, mournful shadows across the apartment. No subject line, just a link. For a moment, I considered deleting it unseen, pretending I had never received it. But something in me, a stubborn shard of the girl who had once waited by silent phones, hoping, needed to know. I clicked. It was a recording. Crackling, low voices. Laughter. Patricia's voice, syrupy and sharp, telling some story about how Shanda always thought she was better than us. Carla chiming in, Dean chuckling along, words that twisted like knives. Lazy, selfish, ungrateful. Every syllable stripped away another layer of whatever fragile hope I had clung to. I wasn't listening to a family grieving a lost connection. I was listening to a firing squad. Alone in my living room, the walls closing in tighter with every sneer and joke, I realized something colder than sadness, heavier than anger. They had never loved me the way I loved them. Maybe they never even tried. The recording ended with laughter, the cruel, easy kind that echoed off my ribs long after the sound had faded. I closed the laptop carefully, hands trembling not from rage but from something quieter, deeper. Mourning the family that had existed only in my imagination. I caught my reflection in the darkened window. A tired woman in an oversized sweatshirt, hair pulled back, eyes rimmed red but dry. "They lost me," I whispered to the empty room, the words steady and sharp. "Not the other way around." The last goodbye. The knock came just as the late summer sun was beginning to dip behind the rooftops, casting long golden fingers across my living room floor. I wasn't expecting anyone. I approached the door slowly, heart already tightening with a sense of inevitability. When I pulled it open, there she was, Patricia, standing small and hunched under the weight of something too heavy for her to carry alone. Her eyes were swollen, her hair messy, her hands shaking slightly as she clutched a worn leather-bound album against her chest. "Please," she whispered, voice cracking in the still evening air. I didn't move aside. Instead, I stood there, a silent gatekeeper to a life I was no longer offering entrance to. Patricia stepped closer, desperation radiating off her in waves. She started talking quickly, words tumbling over each other in her rush to say everything and nothing all at once. The family falling apart, debts piling up, no one else willing to step up. "You're the only one who can fix this," she pleaded. "You're the only one who ever really could." Guilt wrapped its familiar fingers around my throat, but I didn't let it tighten. I had learned how to breathe differently now. Without waiting for an invitation, Patricia flipped open the album she held. Photos tumbled out, glossy windows into a life I was supposed to recognize. Birthdays, Christmas mornings, beach vacations, smiling faces, laughter caught mid-motion. Except I wasn't there. Or rather, I was. Half a shoulder, a shadow on the edge, a blurred face cropped out by careless scissors. Photo after photo after photo, erased, forgotten. I looked up at Patricia, who was still talking, her voice thick with tears, never noticing the evidence she had handed me. It had never been about loving me. It had always been about controlling me. I closed the album gently, as if tucking away the body of something long dead. "I can't save what never included me to begin with," I said, my voice soft but immovable. "I'm not coming back." Patricia's mouth opened in protest, but I was already stepping back, already closing the door. Through the small window, I watched her sink onto the porch, the album slipping from her fingers, forgotten as easily as I had been all those years ago. I leaned against the door, feeling the wood press solidly against my back. Tears pricked my eyes but didn't fall. I had mourned them already. This was just the funeral. The resolution, moving beyond the past. The frantic texts, no guilt waiting for me before I even got out of bed. The sunlight poured through the windows, thick and golden, warming the hardwood floors and touching the edges of the furniture. It was a small house, a little worn, but it was mine. Every creak in the floorboards, every paint chip on the wall, it was all mine. I wrapped myself in a blanket and sat by the window, a steaming mug of coffee in my hands. The memories came easily now. Not sharp stabs like before, but more like old photographs, faded and softened by time. The birthday parties I spent in the background. The hospital room I sat alone in. The holidays celebrated without my name even being spoken. Each of those moments had felt like tiny deaths once, pieces of me chipped away without ceremony. But sitting here now, I realized they had also been carving something else out of me. Space. Room to grow into someone who didn't need their permission to exist. I pulled my phone out, scrolling through the voicemails I had saved. Messages from Patricia, Carla, even Dean. Pleas, accusations, manipulations. One by one, I deleted them. I didn't do it out of anger. I didn't do it out of forgiveness either. I did it because they no longer had a place in my pockets or in my chest. For a long time, I had carried their voices like weights, dragging them through every room I moved into. Today, I chose to leave them behind. I didn't need their permission. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need them. I picked up a notepad from the coffee table and scribbled a few words, more for myself than anyone else. I chose me, and that will always be enough. Outside, the world beckoned, vibrant and humming with life. I had plans to meet Lorraine and Tanya later. We were starting a new tradition this year, Friendsgiving in August, because why not? No cold shoulders at the table, no empty places set for people who never showed up, only laughter and stories. and plates passed back and forth without judgment. I slipped on my shoes and stepped out into the late summer light. The air smelled of salt and honeysuckle, and the road stretched wide open ahead of me. I didn't know exactly where it would lead, but for the first time, I knew it wouldn't loop back. Looking back, I realize healing isn't about who apologizes first or who finally sees your worth. It's about choosing yourself even when it feels like you're standing alone. Family isn't defined by blood, but by love, by kindness, by those who show up without needing to be asked. If you're struggling to cut ties with people who only remember you when they need something, know this. Walking away isn't selfish. It's survival. It's growth. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you thought would always be there? What helped you move forward? Share your story in the comments. You never know who might need your words today. If this story touched your heart, comment 1 inch or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't, that's okay too. Let me know why and where you found this video. And if you'd like to hear more real healing stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your journey matters, and you're never as alone as you think.